Today we're going to be looking at lesson 1.2 and 1.3. I can work with number lines, compare order numbers, and understand absolute value. Before we start, let's look at some jokes. So there's a bunch of penguins sitting around a polar bear, and one of the penguins says, "Now Edgar's gone. Something's going on around here." Let's take a look at our vocabulary preview to get started. Today's our primary focus is going to be on integers again, the whole set of whole numbers and their opposites, as well as some practice with inequalities, a mathematical statement that says two quantities are not equal, and numbers less than 0 and positive numbers, so negative and positive numbers. We'll also be focusing a bit on absolute value as well. Let's get into it. So we're going to start off with a little bit of inequalities. And remember, inequalities are a mathematical statement that says two quantities are not equal. So if you remember, inequalities are represented with the following: greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. So let's get started with the first one. -4 and -2. Choosing one of our four symbols here, -4 is, here's -4 here and here's -2, is less than -2. -3 and -5. -3 is closer to 0, therefore -3 is greater than -5. 0 and -4. 0 and -4. 0 is greater than -4. Let's continue with our lesson. Let's order the following integers. Okay, remember, an integer, the set of whole numbers and their opposite. So we've got 4, -2, and 1. And it says to order the following. Well, I didn't put it here, but let's do it from least to greatest. Okay, so the smallest number would be -2, followed by 1, and then 4. So we have -2, 1, and then 4. Let's jump over to absolute value. Remember, the absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. If you were to graph this using a function, you would have y equals, with these symbols here, x. Absolute value of x. And notice how the graph makes a V shape with absolute value. Okay. Let's take a look at number 5. We want to find the absolute value on a number line of using 4 and -5. Starting from 0, the distance is 4. From 0 -5, the distance is 5. Now remember, with absolute value, the distance is always positive. Let's go down to number 6. These bars represent absolute value. So when you see these straight bars, think absolute value. We want to do an inequality symbol between the absolute value of -9 and -10. Remember our four inequality symbols from earlier: greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Before we can give it a symbol, simplify the following. -9 becomes 9, and -10 becomes 9 and 10. 9 is less than 10. Let's do a story problem. Death Valley has an elevation of -282 feet relative to sea level. Explain how to use absolute value to describe the elevation of Death Valley as a positive integer. Remember, positive are all numbers greater than 0, and an integer is a set of all whole numbers and their opposite. So, in order for us to write this as a positive integer, we need to understand absolute value. And absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. So if we're at minus 282 feet relative to sea level for our integer, how can we write this as a positive integer? Well, first of all, what is the absolute value of minus 282? It's 282. Now, we want to write this, we basically want to write this in words instead of numbers. So how can we describe minus 282 feet relative to sea level? Using words. Well, in this case, we're looking at 282 feet below sea level. Do I have a positive integer here? I do. Let's just do a quick check to make sure we understand. Let's do a couple more. 5,001, write it as a positive integer. Again, we want to find the absolute value of minus 5,000, which is 5,000. As a positive integer would be spending 5,001. Minus 100 points, writing it as a positive integer. So we have 100, okay, and we're losing 100 points. Let's do one more question before we wrap things up. Can two different numbers have the same absolute value? If yes, give an example. If no, explain why not. Well, let's think about two numbers here. So, remember, absolute value is represented with bars. So let's start with minus 2 and 2. Okay, so let's represent that with our bars. And remember, these are two different numbers. If I find the absolute value of minus 2, that's 2. And if I find the absolute value of 2, that's also 2. So the answer is yes. And there is my example. Today you learned how to work with number lines, compare ordered numbers, and understand absolute value. Thanks for tuning in.